Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. I'm not sure if this tale really fits here, since I wasn't the one actually wronged. My payback was on behalf of someone I've never met, and I honestly don't know if they ever got any satisfaction from it. But I do know the effect it had on the perpetrator, and it sure as hell satisfied me, so I'll let you decide if it belongs. Like many of my stories, this one takes place a while back, before smartphones were everywhere and caller ID was still a novelty, probably around 2010 or so. These details are important for what went down. Our story unfolds in a big city on the East Coast, renowned for its cheesesteaks and historical sites. I was there for a few months on a work assignment, getting ready for the office one particular morning. As usual, I had the radio on, tuned to a popular local station. The DJs had this thing they did called Wake Up Wednesday, where they'd make a prank call live on air to some poor sap nominated by listeners. Now, doing prank calls on the radio was a legal gray area back then. I'd been a college DJ myself, so I knew the FCC rules. You can't make fake emergency calls or anything misleading like that. It's a federal rap, and stations could get massive fines, licenses revoked, maybe even jail time for the staff. Serious business. But prank calls were this weird loophole that some stations pushed the limits on for laughs while others played it safe. The debate was still raging at the time. This Wednesday, the victim was a lady nominated by her own husband. How thoughtful, right? Apparently they'd had a power outage earlier that week, so the guy's brilliant idea was for the DJs to call his wife at work pretending to be from the electric company, saying it was her fault and she'd have to pay thousands to fix it. Real hilarious stuff. So they dialed her up at the bank she worked at, and this poor woman answered. "Hello, is this Mrs. Jenkins? I'm calling from Metro Power Electric Company. You had an outage a few days ago, right? Well, we determined it was caused by a wiring issue at your house and a blown transformer that will need to be replaced. That means you're liable for the full cost. We're looking at around $7,500 here. We can just add that to your next bill, or we can set up a payment plan, but your service may need to be cut off until it's settled. There's also a chance this could lead to legal action if..." You get the idea. As this guy rambled on, dropping these bombshells, you could hear the woman getting more and more freaked out, questioning it, but the DJ just dug in harder, piling on threats about lawsuits and having her lights cut if she didn't cough up the cash ASAP. Finally, she broke down crying and hung up, but the jacka called back. When a co-worker picked up asking who it was, he lied and said he was the husband. Real classy move. Back at the studio, the DJs were cracking up, taking calls from listeners howling about what a hilarious prank it was. They got the husband himself on too. Let's call him Rick. And he joined the laughing, joking about being in the doghouse tonight, but congratulating them on a job well done tormenting his wife. The DJs were so proud they promised to replay the whole thing at noon for people who missed it. I'm sitting in my cruddy apartment hearing all this go down, absolutely fuming. I'd just gotten married myself and couldn't fathom ever doing that to my wife, let alone being the one to set her up for it like Rick did. While they were all laughing it up, I pictured this poor woman a few miles away, probably in the bathroom stall sobbing, coworkers trying to console her, and the one guy who's supposed to be her rock just throws her to the wolves for cheap laughs. It pissed me off so much that I decided to get a little payback. I grabbed the phone book, showing my age, and looked up two numbers. First, I dialed the radio station. You might remember I said I was a college radio DJ too. It was a tiny outfit, but I knew how stations operated. What got them riled up, and more importantly, what spooked them to their core. Plus, I could put on one hell of a professional voice thanks to voiceover gigs in school. The phone rang and some bro answered with their stupid slogan. That's when I struck. Me. Deep. Official tone. "Hello, this is Donald Reynolds from the Philadelphia office of the Federal Communications Commission. I need to speak to your program director immediately regarding a serious complaint about your morning show." Bro DJ, stammering. He's not... let me... He put me on hold. Few moments later, different voice. Station manager, nervous. "Hi, you're from the FCC?" Me. "Yes. This is Donald Reynolds. As I told your colleague, I have received disturbing complaints about content on your morning radio program today that appears to violate FCC regulations on deceptive broadcasting practices. I need to speak with your program director as well as the station manager right away to discuss this matter." Manager, audibly gulping. Oh, wow. They're not actually in the building yet. They get here around 9. Can they call you then? Me. Sigh. Very well. I'll expect a call from both of them promptly at 9 a.m. to discuss this. I'll need full details on the accusations, your internal policies and practices, audio recordings and station logs from today's broadcast, and likely statements from the on-air talent as well. This is a very serious matter. Manager. Absolutely, sir. I'll make sure they contact you first thing. I gave him the phone number for the actual Philly FCC office and hung up. Switching back to the radio, I could hear the DJs had gone silent. No more laughing, no more recapping the prank, just weird tense mumbling as they played songs back to back. Bro, DJ. Yikes. The FCC just called about that prank. Not sure if they can actually do anything, though. I had a communications law class and he tried bragging it off, but you could hear the fear in his voice. They spent the whole show just playing music, stone cold silent otherwise. No more prank call replays, no calls from Rick, the hilarious husband, nothing. And definitely no encore at noon like they promised. For the rest of the week, not a single mention of Wake Up Wednesday or prank calls at all. Later on, it hit me why they folded like a lawn chair. I didn't just scare them. I embarrassed them in the same way they did to that poor woman, except on a massive public scale. Once, Bro DJ basically admitted on the air that they got a call from the FCC and then went radio silent. All their listeners could read between the lines. After humiliating that woman for cheap laughs, they were too chickens to even own up to getting got themselves. That realization made me smile for days. I never learned that lady's name, but part of me hopes our paths will cross someday. If some random dude comes up, calls you Mrs. Jenkins and says, "Remember that time your crappy husband set you up to be punked on the radio?" Maybe we'll both finally get some closure on this weird saga. Either way, I hope she knows that, at least for one morning, someone had her back against those immature jackasses. The next one is an entitled people story. I've lived in my cozy little house for over 15 years now. It's nothing too fancy, just a simple 2-bedroom place with a small yard out front. But it's my slice of suburbia that I've made into a home. When I first moved here, the neighborhood association, or homeowner association as most people called it, barely had any presence. There were just a few odd rules about keeping your lawn trimmed and not leaving trash cans out front. Nothing too bothersome. Folks around here were friendly and minded their own business for the most part. But a few years ago, that all changed when a new board was elected to run the homeowner association. And let me tell you, they meant business. Suddenly, there were all these new rules and regulations about what you could and couldn't do to your property. I'm talking fines for having the wrong colored curtains. It was like we were living in a dictatorship. Leading this charge was a woman named Susan, who fit the homeowner association Karen stereotype to a T. She was constantly patrolling the neighborhood, clipboard in hand, searching for the slightest infraction to pounce on. And she took particular joy in targeting me for some reason, maybe because I refused to repaint my front door the approved shade of country cream white. One morning, I was out doing some yard work when a large white van came rolling up and parked in front of my house. Next thing I know, 5 guys pile out carrying ladders, paint cans, and brushes. They head straight for my front door as if they own the place. I hurry over to cut them off before they can start slapping paint on my house. Whoa, what's going on here? I ask in confusion. One of the guys checks his work order and says, "We're here to paint the front exterior." "By whose authority?" I question pointedly. "The homeowner association sent us. They said this house needs to be updated to comply with the approved color palette for the neighborhood." I let out an exasperated sigh. Of course, this had Susan written all over it. "Yeah, well, you can turn right back around because nobody gave me notice about any of this. I'm not letting you touch my house." The worker guys all exchange uncertain glances. "But we have orders," one of them starts to argue. I stand firm with my arms crossed. "I don't care what orders you have. This is my property and nobody is doing any work on it without my consent." At that moment, Susan comes marching over, fire in her eyes. "What seems to be the problem here?" she demands. I level a stare at her. "The problem is you sending people to mess with my house without even notifying me first. I'm not allowing this." Susan's lips pinch together in annoyance. "As chairperson of the Homeowner Association Board, I have full authority to approve projects that bring properties in this neighborhood up to code." "Yeah, well, I didn't sign anything giving you authority over my property. You don't get to make unilateral decisions about my house," I shoot back. We go back and forth for several minutes with her citing bylaws and community standards while I stand firm that she has no right to impose changes on my private property. Finally, she throws her hands up in exasperation. "You are out of compliance, and this paint job is going to happen whether you cooperate or not." Now it's my turn to get angry. "Listen carefully, Susan. I am not a member of your homeowner association. Nothing in any bylaw applies to my property. If you try to send anyone here again without my consent, I won't hesitate to file harassment charges against you personally, as well as the entire homeowner association board." That seemed to give her pause. I could almost see the wheels turning in her head as she weighed whether she wanted to push the matter legally. After a tense minute, she finally turns on her heel and signals for the workers to pack up. "You haven't heard the last of this," she snaps bitterly over her shoulder. I hold my ground and watch as the van pulls away, then breathe a sigh of relief. Crisis averted. But I had a feeling this was just the opening salvo in what could become an all-out war with Susan and her homeowner association cronies. I needed to educate myself on my legal rights as a non-homeowner association homeowner and prepare for their next move. After doing some research online and consulting a lawyer friend, I sent Susan and the Homeowner Association Board a strongly worded letter. It stated in no uncertain terms that they had zero authority over my property, and if they continued harassment, I would pursue legal action. I included copies of my deed, tax records, and other documents proving my sole ownership. For a couple months, they seemed to back off. Then one weekend, I came home to find a crew of landscapers trying to remove my tree and rose bushes from the front yard. Once again, homeowner association orders. This time I didn't even argue. I immediately called the police to report trespassers destroying my property. The cops came and forced the crew to stop work since they clearly did not have permission to be altering my landscaping. The poor guys said they were just following homeowner association orders, but with me pressing charges, they agreed it was smarter to just leave. My next move was a restraining order against Susan herself. The judge agreed her behavior was harassing and reckless. She was incensed about being banned from my street, but it was deeply satisfying to see her sputtering indignation. In a final act of revenge, I repainted my front door a garish neon green that clashed horribly with the neutral earth tones of the rest of the houses. The homeowner association tried fining me, but I gleefully informed them I did not fall under their jurisdiction. Eventually, Susan was ousted from the board and the new members were much more reasonable. They understood I was exempt from homeowner association rules and stopped harassing me. No more invasive crews showing up unannounced. I could finally enjoy my little non-compliant haven of a home in peace. So the moral is, don't let the homeowner association Karens of the world bully you into giving up control of your own property. Know your rights and stand your ground. Their fake authority only extends as far as you allow it, and sometimes the best revenge is a freshly painted green door to torment them with every time they pass by. The next one is a petty revenge story. As kids, I was 17F, brother was 15, we had horses, and for some reason in the winter the deer would break the top wire of the electric fence. Always at the furthest point in the pasture, too. So when we went out to do chores before school, if the fence was broken, we had to fix it so the horses could be turned out. I would unplug the fencer, drag supplies up the hill, and splice the fence. As soon as I got the pieces together, zap! Now, I was pretty sure I unplugged the fencer, but hey, it was early morning, so maybe I forgot. I get back down to the barn and my brother was doing chores. I asked him and he said he plugged it back in because he saw it was unplugged and wanted to help. I told him not to plug it in unless he finds me first and why. Well, next time I am on the hill, zap, repeat convo above, rinse and repeat for 2 weeks. Nothing I said got him to stop. Until we had a crew cab dually with a 454 8-cylinder truck and Dad decided it needed a tune-up. He got all the stuff and asked my brother to do the tune-up. Now I knew my way around auto repair and had done a tune-up or two myself, so I knew exactly what I was doing. I was helping. The hood was up, and he had gone to get another tool, so I figured I would help, by pulling all the spark plug wires off both the distributor and the spark plugs. He came back, and I told him really excited that I helped him get started and showed him how. I thought he was going to cry. He asked why I pulled them all. I told him that he had been so helpful with the fence and plugging it in for me, and that I wouldn't be a great sister if I didn't help him when he needed it. He was mad, but learned his lesson. Having to figure out the firing order for the truck without Google to help took him 2 hours. But he did stop plugging the fencer in on me. The next one is a malicious compliance story. So, there I was, working at a mid-sized IT firm as a software developer. My team had always been pretty laid back, focusing on results rather than the exact hours we were glued to our desks. Our projects were delivered on time, our clients were happy, and our team morale was high. That is, until we got a new project manager, let's call him Dave. Dave was fresh from a highly regimented corporate background and had ideas about proper workplace management, which basically meant micromanaging everything. He'd schedule unnecessary daily status meetings, demanded we fill out hourly work logs, and insisted that everyone strictly adhere to 9 to 5 office hours with minimal breaks. One day, during one of his infamous efficiency crackdowns, he sent out an email with a new policy that all coding must be done strictly within office hours to ensure collaboration and supervision. This was ridiculous because creative work like coding often requires flexible hours for maximum productivity, but Dave was adamant and he ended his email with, "If you think you can find a loophole, think again, follow the rules or we'll find someone who will." Challenge accepted, Dave. I decided to comply, meticulously. I coded strictly between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., not a minute earlier, not a second later. If I encountered a bug or was in the middle of a complex piece of code, too bad. 5 p.m. means the end, no matter what. My teammates, fed up with being treated like school children, followed my lead. The results were predictable. Projects that usually took a couple of weeks started dragging on. Tasks that we could have completed in days with a bit of overtime took much longer because we couldn't capitalize on the bursts of late afternoon productivity we were used to. Our workflow was severely disrupted and the quality of our work started to deteriorate. Dave noticed, of course. He had to answer to upper management for the sudden drop in productivity and lack of commitment, which he knew was a result of our dissatisfaction with his new policy. When upper management called for an impromptu Zoom meeting with the entire at 4:30 p.m. to address the ongoing project delays, the entire team logged in to explain our situation. In the meeting, Dave spent half an hour shifting blame and berating individual team members. He didn't even mention the 9-5 policy that had led to the whole situation. As the clock ticked towards 5 p.m., the tension in the virtual room was palpable, and our team hatched a plan over text. Right on cue, as the clock struck 5 p.m., one of the employees spoke up. In compliance with Dave's 9-to-5 rule, we must log off now. Without missing a beat, every team member clicked Leave Meeting, leaving a stunned Dave to face the executives alone. This abrupt mass exit highlighted the impracticality of Dave's rigid policy, making it clear to the executives that change was necessary. The incident, quickly dubbed as the 5 o'clock Zoom exodus, led to another meeting where Dave was publicly admonished and instructed to abolish his strict rules in favor of more flexibility. And as for me and my team, we made sure to celebrate our little victory with a well-deserved happy hour, after 5 p.m. of course. The next one is an entitled People Story. Backstory, in the early to mid-90s, around when I was 13 and my brother 15, we traveled from our home state to my dad's current state to spend the summer with him and meet his wife for the first time. We didn't have much of a relationship with our dad. He was largely absent in our lives, moving to his new state when I was 6. His wife turned out to be awful. She started out nice, but slowly became very mean, treating me like a slave and making me take care of her grandchildren the entire summer. Me and my brother were miserable. My mom ended up bringing us home because all she did was make us do chores. I didn't mind helping, but I did all of it. And I started my period and she said she was too busy to go get me pads. I had one in my carry-on bag and we were close to going home, so I stuffed my underwear with toilet paper and saved the pad for the airplane ride. Fast forward, she dropped us at the doors to airport, didn't even come in to check us in. Dad was at work. We get in there and find our connecting flight at our layover stop would be late and we would be stranded in that airport. Brother called our mom from a payphone and she called my dad's house where his wife informed her that she knew this, the airport had called her, but she was too busy with her grandkids and didn't have the time to deal with us and we would have to figure it out. I started crying and told my mom I would rather sleep in the airport than go back to their house anyways. A very nice couple and their children saw me crying and came over to help. They were on the same flight as us and had worked it out to get a flight to an airport 3 hours from our house. They helped us get on the same flight and stayed with us till they were able to hand us over to our mom and stepdad, wonderful man, and they drove us home. I still have not totally forgiven my dad for not only letting her treat us like crap, but staying with her after she abandoned us in an airport when I was only 13 years old. But for my grandparents' sake, I have been civil with him. I will never speak to her again, though. I had the opportunity to tell her how I felt when she tried to friend me on Facebook, and that is the only time I have spoken to her in 31 years. I like to send greeting cards, and would send some to my dad every once in a while. I always only addressed it to him. She got butthurt and complained to him about me not addressing her in the cards, and he in turn complained to my grandma, who complained to me. I said, fine, guess I am not sending him cards ever again, and I haven't. I can't believe she feels so entitled and delusional as to think she should get cards from me after she abandoned me and my brother in an airport far from our home. Grandparents are both dead now, and I don't think I will ever see him again. He texts me from time to time and I will answer it, but I do not go out of my way to speak to him. My stepdad walked me down the aisle and my kids call him Grandpa. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.